This is Jeffrey Major. We're doing a brief overview of storm deductibles for Hurricane and Tropical Storm Harvey. I'm an ex-builder, building damages expert, appraiser, umpire, claims expert, and insurance adjuster. I'm a licensed public adjuster, independent adjuster, and insurance consultant in many states, including Texas. I want to go over deductibles specific to Harvey and what you need to look at when you're looking at an insurance claim, have an insurance claim, or working for somebody with an insurance claim. We're all familiar with the dollar amount deductible. That's your $500, $5,000, $50,000, whatever the dollar amount stated deductible is. Time element deductible, for those of you who are not familiar with them, it's not a dollar amount, it's a time amount. 24, 48 hours, or in many cases 72 hours for business interruption or certain types of coverages where there's no restriction, there's no first dollar amount, the coverage doesn't start until, say, 72 hours after an event. That's going to be relevant in our discussion because we're going to have to define what an event is when it starts and stops. Windstorm, named storm, hurricane deductibles. Harvey is a windstorm. It's a named storm. It's a hurricane. And as much as Harvey may be what it is, there is a difference between the deductibles. So if your policy contains some isoforms, the CPO 325 is a named storm percentage deductible form. It can be found in regular property forms, building, personal property, condo, association, and unit owner forms, standard property forms. So the named storm percentage deductible form, the CPO 325, basically identifies any named storm by the National Hurricane Center. But what's relevant is under the terms of the endorsement, a named storm begins at the time a watch or warning is issued by the National Hurricane Center for an area which it's going to affect and ends 72 hours after the termination of the last watch or warning for that area. This is very relevant in Harvey because if Harvey became a named storm when it was in the Gulf or before it even made landfall, the event was happening, and it's now August 26th. The Harvey's still going on and could linger for days. So when does the 72 hours start? Some attorneys are going to have to flush that out, identify case law, or make case law so we know when your 72 hours starts. If it's a 10-day storm and the event is 10 days and the 72 hours happens after that, that's going to really hurt business owners who have a time element deductible depending on when it starts. So in a policy, when you're reviewing it, you're going to see your normal limits, your building, your BPP, business interruption, or whatever limits you have. There's going to be a deductible schedule. But what you need to look for is your named storm deductibles and minimum deductibles. They're going to be listed somewhere, either on a deductible schedule or in a form somewhere. So in this policy, it's a 3% named storm deductible per building, subject to a minimum of $25,000 per occurrence. So this policy basically tells us what our coverages are, tells us what our named storm deductible is, and they define what a named storm is. So in this policy, we have one location with $6 million in change, and the named storm deductible is $185,000 in change. So that is per location, but if you recall, the other language in the policy was per building and a minimum per location. So there's a little bit of an ambiguity in this policy. We had this policy tested in another event the insurance carrier inadvertently applied a $25,000 per building deductible. We presented the coverage. We got a coverage opinion. We presented it to the carrier. We got underwriting involved, and they confirmed that the intent was what we had claimed it to be, which significantly reduced the deductible to the insured. It was still a windstorm deductible and a percentage, but it was not the $25,000 per building. It was the percentage on per location. So in that policy, where you have a building limit of $2.9 million, the deductible is there, but it's not going to really hurt in a sense. And you can note here there's business income with extra expense at a 72-hour wind deductible. On a building with only $177,000 coverage, there's some potential concern, because if the form says named storm deductible $185,000 and the insurance company's trying to apply it to a building, then you're going to have an issue or a location. So you're going to have to check that, and also check the language of how the form is written and the dates of the forms to see if one supersedes another. And you can always get a lawyer to give you a coverage opinion. Strata Underwriting Managers writes a lot in the Gulf Coast and Texas. So they have their typical policies where you have your real property, business personal property, BI. I just want to make a quick side note for wind and hail claims on existing roof coverings that have been in place for 15 years and a day. They're at actual cash value. So it's important to look for this type of coverage also. And the reason is if you have an older roof that is only going to be at actual cash value and then subject to a named storm deductible, there could be a very, very large deduction. It could even happen where damage could be zeroed out by replacement costs could be of value, less depreciation gives you an actual cash value. Then the deductible applied to the ACV could mean no payment to an insured. So you need to check that also while you're looking at deductibles. So in the Strata policy, they have a deductible schedule. And what you'll note in number 6 is by wind, hail, or hurricane for all losses covered under this policy. But what's interesting is that you have A and B. A is for windstorm, including a named storm, that is in a county that is designated as a high hazard county per a different form, the NCR 606. So the NCR 606 gives you a list of high hazard counties to which one windstorm or named storm deductible applies to, and then for all other counties or locations other than the stated high hazard counties, there's a separate deductible. I did not include the schedule of deductibles in this example, but there are 2 different deductibles, and it's a higher one in the high hazard counties that are stated in the NCR 606. So this is the NCR 606. The form came out on 4/14, and basically it gives you a list of all the states. I just cut out and pasted in Texas, and it gives you a list of the counties that are subject to the high wind hazard deductible or in those areas. And if you recognize, if you've been following Harvey and you look at any of these counties or know the counties on the Gulf Coast of Texas, you'll see that they're the ones that are pretty much affected by Harvey. So these counties are designated by a form. If you don't have the form and you don't have that separate deductible, you don't have to deal with it, or you don't have that issue. But if you see in the declarations, in the forms and endorsements attached to the policy, the NCR 606, or an ISO form that is for a named storm deductible, then you're going to have to look to see what these deductibles are and where they are. So in this policy, you have a property in Port Lavaca, Texas, who got hit by Harvey. There's $6.3 million on real property, some BPP and business income, loss of rents. You have around $7.5 million total insured. And if you just take a quick look and you don't know any better, you'll think that you have a $7 million policy with a $10,000 deductible, and you're paying $20,000 a year, so you think it's, realistic. But the reality is that because you're in a certain county and location, and because you have a named storm and windstorm deductible that is separate from your standard peril deductible, you have something else to consider. Now, what you'll note in this schedule is there's a roof year of 2005. This is less than 15 years and a day, so this policy for this location is subject to RCV calculation. But if this were an older roof and it was older than 15 years and a day, then this policy could potentially have a ACV settlement subject to a high deductible, which could net a zero payment on the claim. You need to know these things before you start with all your recovery efforts and your claim and everything you're going to put together. You really need to know what the coverages are. So to wrap up, those were just a couple examples showing that there's big limits, there's big deductibles, and to know that you could be facing multiple deductible situations for different properties and different buildings. If there is a tornado that is not subject to a percentage deductible that would potentially be subject to your $10,000 deductible, but that tornado is concurrent or in a band or caused by Harvey, which is a named storm that is still occurring, it may not be that your damage from the tornado is subject to your $10,000 deductible. It may be that it's subject to the named storm deductible. So what you want to do when you get involved with a claim or looking at a policy, you want to review the policy, you want to review the declaration pages, you want to review all the forms and endorsements, take note of the dates of the forms. If you have some ambiguity or you have some questions that you're going to reach out to an attorney for a legal opinion, the dates of the forms are going to be relevant. And then once you have all that information, you calculate your appropriate limits. I'm saying new limits. They're not the new limits. They were the limits that were in place when the storm happened, but maybe new to you, the adjuster, or you, the attorney, or the client, or the property owner. And if this is not common daily practice for you, I've been doing this for 25 years. I deal with this on every storm. Ask an expert, call an attorney, call somebody. If you're an insured, have somebody review your policy and give you the answers. And don't just take somebody's word for it. Have somebody really look into it and show you and lay out for you what the coverages are and how you got there and what your potential actions could be and what your limitations are. So that's a quick overview of storm deductibles subject to Hurricane Harvey. If you have any questions, give us a call, and thank you for your time.